people, Gotti Edelman here, and no, this is not another out-of-the-box review, but rather a project that I've been working on, and I promised everybody on social media that I would share it with you via video as soon as it was done. So let me explain what we've got here. For those of you that follow me and my reviews online, you already know that I'm a die-hard 1911 fan. And I got my first 1911 back in 81 or 1982, and it was a Colt Combat Commander, and I actually used that as my everyday carry for a lot of years. So when I had the chance to acquire this weapon, to say I was excited would be an understatement. What I got was a World War II carried in theater by a soldier, 1943 1911. Now this particular model was made by the Ithaca gun company, and you know, 1911s were made by so many different corporations during the war. Every company stepped up and started manufacturing things for the war effort. Even Singer Sewing Machine made some of these 1911s. Now this particular one, as you can see, is stamped that it is United States property, and it does say that it is an M1911A1 U.S. Army. Now, unfortunately, at some point, the soldier that owned this weapon tried to scrape that off, and luckily, not too much damage was done to it, and it is more than legible. I found out from an appraiser that that actually was not that uncommon, because a lot of guys that brought their weapons home were concerned they would get in trouble at that time because it was, quote, government property, and they tried to remove that from the gun. But first, let me clear the weapon, and then we'll get on with what we're doing here. So, this weapon, as you can see, is totally empty. And now that we've cleared it, we've made it safe, we can go on with the story. So when I obtained this weapon, initially it came with the original holster that that soldier had used in World War II. And as you can see, the soldier is stamped US across the top here. Initially, these had a much larger flap that went over them, and a lot of guys in theater would trim them down to be like this, so they were easier to get the weapon in and out of the holster. Well, what I decided I wanted to do, even though this weapon is not only functional and reliable and extremely accurate all these years later, as all the 1911s are, I decided I wanted to put this in some type of shadow box so I could show it off, rather than using it as one of my regular take it to the range weapons. So I went online and I started searching out for shadow boxes, and I came upon a lot of shadow boxes that had more than just the gun, the magazine, or the holster in it. And I decided, one thing leads to another, to make an entire shadow box, kind of a memorabilia to the men and women who served in World War II, and more importantly, the men that carried this type of weapon. So I started to acquire different items that I felt would be good to go in the shadow box, and they all had to be vintage. So the first thing that I obtained was the military pouch that the soldiers would have carried with 2 extra magazines. This particular model, as stamped, is from the Avery Company, 1943, and that may actually be 1942. Forgive me, I'm not sure if that's a 3 or a 2. I really don't care. Everything that's going in this box is from either 1942 or 1943. The next thing that I obtained was a trench knife. Now this is an authentic, carried in the theater in World War II by a soldier. It was actually changed a little bit, again, not uncommon, by the soldier that owned it. He actually grooved the leather handle to fit his fingers, and the weapon has, the blade, pardon me, has been sharpened and resharpened and reshaped quite a bit, and it came with the original scabbard. Now, the scabbard, as you can tell, has seen better days, but again, that adds to the character. It talks about the weapon and what this weapon has been through. The next thing that I obtained was a lanyard. Now, let me just show you that this too is stamped. Right there, if you can make that out. Hopefully the camera can pick that up. I believe this was Hickok 1944. This lanyard would go through the bottom of the weapon, right, don't want to point it at myself, right here on the bottom of the weapon. That would go through there, and then it would be worn around the shoulder and through the epaulette, so if you dropped your gun, you actually didn't lose it because it would be on the end of the lanyard. The next thing that I obtained was a Met glass breakdown tool. Now, I highly doubt that you'll be able to see this on the camera, but it does say Met glass and has a serial number on it. This is a breakdown tool that would have come with every Colt 45 or every 1911 in theater, and this was used to break the weapon down. So, after that, I thought that it would be neat to add a lighter, because a lot of guys during World War II smoked, and a lot of guys that didn't smoke started once they were there. And what you had was, even back then, it was so prevalent and so common that Lucky Strikes were put into the rations that the men received while they were in theater. I could have gotten a Zippo. Zippo was popular, especially towards the end of the war. They made a Zippo crackle lighter, and I did look at those online, but I decided to go with an original trench lighter. Now, this particular trench lighter that I acquired actually was manufactured by the same company that makes Camel cigarettes, and you can see the Camel right there. But originally, these lighters were made out of brass cartridges, and that started in World War I. Guys made them, and that's why they were called trench lighters. Now, this particular one, when I acquired it online, I got a really good deal on it because the gentleman that was selling it said it did not work and that the wheel wouldn't turn and it wouldn't strike. Well, I owned it for about less than 1 minute and fixed that right up. If I were to put fluid in here, it would definitely work. The wheel was a little bit bent and damaged, and I straightened that out, and everything is good to go. So we've got the trench lighter. The next thing that I obtained was a box of ammo from the same year, 1943, as the weapon itself. This was made, as you can see, by the Evansville Ordnance Company. Evansville was the Chrysler plant. Again, a lot of companies jumped on that war bandwagon. They were part of the war effort, and they manufactured a bunch of different things, but they were one of the largest, if not the largest, towards the end of the war, manufacturer of .45 caliber ammo. So the box is from 1943, and then I had a gentleman who saw me posting online all the different things that I was acquiring, and he was kind enough to ship me 7 rounds steel-cased ammo from, yes, you guessed it, if I can get that in focus, it says EC43. This is from the Evansville plant, so it matches the ammo box, 1943, so it matches the same year and lot number of this ammo box. And what's more, it matches the weapon itself, all from 1943. So I have 7 rounds of ammunition. The reason he sent me 7 rounds is so that I could fill the original magazine that came with the gun. Last but not least, we needed a flag to put in the shadow box, and what would be better than a all-cotton vintage 48-star flag. So this is a 48-star flag. I had originally posted some pictures of a flag I was going to use, and somebody rightly pointed out online and said, hey, get yourself a 48-star flag. If you're going to keep everything period correct, you want a 48-star flag. So we've got the 48-star flag. Well, then the next thing to do was to get all this in a box. And that's where it got a little bit more difficult, because the boxes that are online are not only extremely outrageously priced, especially when you start getting into boxes that are large enough to handle all of these different items, but they're also usually not that well made. And if I had one custom made, it would have cost me a fortune, unless you happen to have a friend who's also a former Marine, who's retired, who owns his own wood shop. And thank God I do. And I want to give a shout out, because without Steve Trebella's help, this never would have come together. And Steve took this project on as if this was his own, just like any former Marine would, because of what we were doing to dedicate this to the men and women, the greatest generation, World War II. He truly put his blood, sweat, and tears into building this box. And I should say with me, because he let me do some sanding and some staining, but he built this box by himself. And he will tell you that he's a wood butcher, but I'll tell you what, that man is a carpenter. He did a phenomenal job. So I'm going to flip the camera around and I'm going to show you the box that we made, and then, more importantly, how everything gets mounted into the box so as not to damage it, and it's easy to remove so you can show it to people and easy to put back in. So let me flip the camera around and we'll show you everything else. This is the completed shadow box. I'm going to open the door to get rid of that glare. Solid oak, made from one rough cut piece of oak. And what I did, I wanted to have a way of mounting the items where, as I had stated, you can take them out and show them off, have somebody look at it, and then put it back in just as easily. And I wanted to come up with a way of doing that without having to have mounting pieces in here, you know, clips or hooks and things of that sort. I wanted to show the items themselves off, but I didn't want to damage any of these items, obviously. So I'm using magnets. And the way that works, because not everything in here is magnetic, the way that works, obviously the items that are magnetic, it speaks for itself. You place the magnets in, and I used a Gorilla Glue epoxy. It was an AB epoxy, so I know it's going to really stay. Once it's there, it's there. And you place the item where you want it. The items that do have a little bit of metal, such as the scabbard, which has these metal rivets, those can be utilized to hold the item in place. Now, for the items that don't have a lot of metal, but may weigh a little bit more, for example, an item that wants to tilt, what I've done, the back of this does have 4 metal rivets, but because of its curved shape, I had to use a magnet way over, and aside from using this one over here, I had to put something on the flap. So what I've done is I'm using a loose magnet, and these are these rare earth neodymium or neodymium, I'm not sure how they pronounce that, those real strong rare earth magnets. I just lay it inside the holster, and then when I wind it up, I let that magnet grab the magnet that's epoxy to the back of the box, and I can adjust that so that it hangs properly. For the ammo pouch, the area that the belt would go through, I've taken a magnet on each side, and those magnets are just held in. See if I can get that in camera view here. See that magnet sitting there? It's just held in by being magnetized to the magazines that are already in the pouch. So I've got a magnet on each corner which matches up to the magnets in the box. So it'll just hang like that. The ammo in the magazine the lanyard. The tough one was the little trench lighter, because the only piece of metal on here that's magnetic is the flint wheel. So I had to line up 3 magnets together to give it some height so that it would grab and sit correctly in the box rather than sitting cockeyed. And that goes in there like that. The cardboard box, there's a magnet inside the box. So, again, just a small magnet. You place it in the box, and then once you get the box where you want it, top middle, match it up to the magnet that's mounted in the Shadowbox, and I can adjust this, close the lid of the ammo box, and that way everything is in here and nothing is damaged. Nothing at all has any glue, epoxy, and of course the flag just sits up in the corner. The only magnet that you really have to concern yourself with is the one that holds the weapon. Now, for this particular magnet, I went and searched online and I had to find a magnet that would be hidden in its entirety by the size or width of the weapon. So, this is a ghost concealment magnet. They're extremely inexpensive. You can buy them on Amazon, find them online. They're $12, $13. They're not a lot, but they hold up to 35 pounds. This is the only item in the Shadowbox that I actually bolted through the wood because of the amount of weight it's holding, and I didn't want the epoxy to give and one day have this weapon come shattering through the glass. So you get the weapon on there where you want it, and you've got yourself a gun that now when people come over, you can open the door and you can remove it and you can place it back again that easy. So that's the Shadowbox project. I may or may not add other items. I've had a lot of suggestions of other things that can be placed in here, from a Captain American shield to a canteen and belt. So I may or may not add anything, but I did want to show this off. I am extremely proud of this, and best of all, it is made to hang on the wall. So when we manufactured, or I should say when we built this, I did put the hanger on the back, and this is going in my office. So once again, there's your World War II 1911 Shadowbox. And as usual, until next time, I've got your 6, and we'll see you at the range.